Hey everyone, Rho here. Today we review the Warhammer 40k novel, Huron Blackheart, Master of the Maelstrom, by author Mike Brooks. As always with reviews, it'll be spoiler free, followed by a little spoiler reaction discussion at the end. So without further ado, let's begin by checking out the synopsis off the back of the book. Huron Blackheart is the master of the Red Corsairs, but keeping power is never certain for those renegades who have renounced the Imperium. With the galaxy thrown into turmoil by the return of Rabute Guilliman, and new challenges to his authority emerging within his own ranks, Huron must call on every trick he knows to stay in control and alive. But even a warrior as ferocious as the Blood Reaver must be wary, for although there are still bargains open to him, not all are ones he should rush into. So Huron Blackheart, undoubtedly a powerful name in the lore. Personally for me, one that lacks that gravitas that maybe he shouldn't. Whether simply my bias for the legions, or because the spotlight hasn't been on the character for some time, it feels like for all the mention of the Corsairs' actions, we haven't actually seen much of it. And so I was going into this one with a mixture of high hopes and a little trepidation on how much I'd actually bond with the character. Now the plot of the story really revolves around Blackheart's constant battle to keep his control, as the synopsis would suggest. Yes, there is an adventure or event that specifically gives us reason to see Huron at work, but it's really so much more than that. This is a glimpse into one of the galaxy's most powerful warlords, and everything that entails. This isn't a man fighting within a single war zone. This is a man operating on a galactic scale. And perhaps for the first time outside Guilliman, you really do feel that. You feel Huron's mind balancing each and every decision against another, rationalizing it against the possible outcomes. And this for me is by far and away the biggest success of the story. It's a character piece. This is Huron Blackheart's story. Now I know that may sound obvious given the title, but actually I don't think it is. Many times you'll pick up a story expecting it to be about a character, only to spend half the time if not more following someone else. And yes, there is a side story of sorts here, but it's vastly minor compared to Huron himself. And most importantly, it's still very interlinked. Huron Blackheart is still present and very relevant. And so the entire story all feels bound to the tyrant of Badab himself. He is the spotlight that this story keeps in focus. And not only is it so refreshing to spend a story with the title character pretty much the entire time, but it's also a testament to the author for making you want to stay with him. This is my first time reading a novel with Blackheart in, and I know there are other older stories out there, but I have to say he was masterfully brought to life in this. This is no stereotypical evil chaos warlord that you might expect. This is a complex, bitter, rational, power-hungry, hateful man. And yet he is absolutely enrapturing. Being able to see the thought process he goes through when it comes to loyalty, the business-like view he can take of it, it really felt like a unique insight into renegade forces, and the Red Corsairs in particular. Why they have success where so many others haven't. Yes, Huron hates the Imperium, but he doesn't let that emotion guide his judgments and his actions. Yes, he has agreed to aid Abaddon, but he is not the War Master's fool, and he sees Abaddon's offers exactly for what they are. And even seeing his relationship with the ruinous powers themselves, you just can't help but come away with a begrudging respect for him. This is a renegade who wants no part of falling to the gods' sway, because through it all he is his own man. He will be the one to decide his fate, not the Imperium, not Abaddon, and not the gods of chaos. That may sound similar to Abaddon himself in many ways, and indeed maybe it is, but I came away from this feeling a greater authenticity in Huron as a man than I've ever felt from Abaddon's pure hatred. By the time this story hit its first big battle moment, I was surprised in checking the pages I was about halfway through the book, and I wasn't disappointed in the slightest. Don't get me wrong here, the battles are enjoyable and absolutely relevant to the story, not just placed in for Space Marine action for the sake of it, but the intrigue of exploring Huron's world and the Red Corsairs' politics was even better. That's what I mean when I say this is a character piece. It's not afraid to rely on its characters without the grandiose battles. Timing-wise, you'll get to see how and why the Red Corsairs' decisions were taken, fleshing out a little more information on the lore as we know it. And there's also some surprising revelations too. So in reading this, you do feel it relates to the wider picture and works as a standalone story in its own right, also leaving the future open with questions left to be answered. Overall, as someone who was going in with some trepidation, I can't believe how much I enjoyed this one. It was an absolutely great read. Character-driven, character-focused, with a real sense of understanding of what the message it was trying to deliver was. And in bringing Huron Blackheart to life, it beyond succeeds. The battles when they come are great, without overstaying their welcome or description, always serving their purpose. And there was even a few eyebrow-raising moments of excitement. The only downside of this story is it was so short. I read the whole thing in a couple of hours, and I was hoping for a little more in regards to current events. Scoring-wise, 4 out of 5. Easy. An absolute must-read for fans of the Imperium and Chaos alike. You will come away with a greater understanding and appreciation for Huron Blackheart, the Red Corsairs, and really the dynamics of Chaos in the wider Imperium as we know it. If it had hit those 2 minor negatives, I'd probably have this hitting the Blessed by the Emperor 5 out of 5. And considering I had no love for Blackheart before this, that's definitely saying something, and really shows what a tremendous job author Mike Brooks has done with this character. Hopefully we get to see more of him in the future. But okay, that's it for the spoiler-free review. Now just a little spoiler reaction talk on a few things I'd like to discuss for those who have already read the novel. Okay, so like I said with the review, the standout for me was absolutely the portrayal of Huron himself. Really seeing the way that he was interacting with those around him, the constant fears of betrayal that he has to have, and yet the unsurpassed confidence that he embodies. For me, finding out how Huron felt about Abaddon's offer of the Blackstone Fortress was really quite interesting. Again, I haven't read any other novels of this character, so I don't know if it's been covered before, but in really seeing how he can see both sides of this almighty offer was really telling. Any other character out there could have well been bowled over by such a powerful gift, and yet in knowing that he still needs to figure out how to get it working, Huron really boils down to the truth of Abaddon's offer. Just enough to buy his loyalty, yet that little bit more still needed to reel him in completely. Knowing that Huron not only saw this, but he was calculating his responses to it adequately, really was an interesting insight into this character I never had before. Now, some absolute standout moments for me was the first arrival of the Macragge's Honour, really believing for the first time the Ultramarines had arrived, only then to find out that this was set back after Guilliman's Terran Crusade, that this was actually showing us the actions of the Red Corsairs in the aftermath. Once I saw that and realised what time period we were dealing with, my mind immediately started leaping towards the attack on Chogoris, and of course that didn't disappoint either. We got to see why and how Huron decided on that attack. Now, it did appear to change the timeline slightly from the one that already existed, with the initial attack on Chogoris happening before the fall of Cadia, but I don't think it changes too much from a general look. The events were obviously very close together anyway, and the flow of time has become a confusing thing at best in the galaxy at the moment, the Great Rift causing havoc across the entire galaxy. Now, the second arrival of the Ultramarines, and the true arrival of the Ultramarines, was definitely one of those eyebrow-raising moments. It didn't quite take me to goosebump levels, but I definitely felt the ante getting upped. The Ultramarines had arrived to get back their flagship, and you just felt their intention here. They had arrived in force, and you really felt it leaping off the page. That was a definite favourite moment of the entire book for me. Now, the heretic Space Wolves I wasn't too fond of, I have to say. However, them turning to attack the commander because they were kept out of battle, now that felt true to character. Quite possibly my favourite moment of all though, was the very first scene in which Huron is introduced. The conversation he has with the Imperial Tech Priest from down the corridor. No action needed, just simple dialogue and thoughts. This was an absolutely brilliant introduction to the character. Not only did it set the stage for the rest of the journey to come, but it also truly gave you a perfect understanding of where his motives and reasons were. All within the space of a few pages, I was completely on board with this character I'd never previously had much time for. Absolutely something I want to discuss more in depth at a later date, because for me that really gave you a true understanding of the renegade that Huron was, and why he is so successful where others are not. But anyway, that's it for the few talking points I wanted to discuss. As always everyone, what did you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. If you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.